Bing bongy bong, bing bongy bong. This is Joe, the bearded historian. He'll tell you an interesting story. Be careful of his soldiers, they can be brats. This is Angel, she's an entity. She'll cause chaos and plant her hands at you. This is Sue, she likes spirits, not the alcohol. She's the reason this channel exists. This is David, he likes fire trucks. He's here occasionally. Bing bongy bong, bing bongy bong, bing bongy bong. We preserve his story. Alright, I'm hoping to get this posted today. July 9th, my birthday, but it's my birthday, so I don't know if I will get it up or not. I'm struggling a little bit, so thoughts, prayers, whatever you can offer, I would appreciate it. Hopefully things will work out, but we'll see. In the meantime, I have a raise. I think I'm going to do the koala one because, well, it's my birthday, so I can. Alright, hold on. Before all that, today's video is a little bit about postcards and how they came to the United States and history of all that. If you're a traveler or cruise peoples, tell me how many stamps you have or whatever it is that they do with passports. I don't own one, so I don't know what they do with them. Maybe someday, if we travel, we'll see. Ready? Here we go. Shout out time. Here's a shout out just for you. You support me, so I support you. This shout out is for our friends. Let's see who it is today. One moment. Alright, there's all of our koalas lined up. Start. Alright, there they go. There's Lakeshore, there's Leech, or Lynch. There's Kev, there's Intrip, there's Day One, there's Luz, there's Nobody, there's Stock, there's Rural, Big Ben, Rushmore, Marketplace, Hazen, Delta, Skipping, Aisha, Ayfield, Skull, Fox Clan, Cokes, Sandra, Up to Bob, Vaughn, David Mercy. Let's see, who else do I see? E-Money, Ford, Peach, Pete, Marketplace. Hold on a minute. Alright, this is Miss Jody's first channel? Oldest channel? I don't know. Marketplace, Boutique. And she is an e-commerce business person since 1998. The only thing I know about e-commerce is that you do it online. Some people have eBay. There's Etsy, Poshmark, probably others that I'm not aware of, where you can sell things. There's a anniversary of a friendship, I'm guessing. It says friend, but who knows. Flea market, thrifting and donating. Here's some shorts for the 4th, I'm going to guess, because we got red, white, and blue and Independence Day. And lives. I catch a lot of her lives, which are usually hanging out with Mr. Andy, driving. A lot of these are members. Which is fun. So check out Miss Jody. Like, share, and comment, and have a good day. Hopefully it'll be better than mine. Okay, Mr. Files, hello Files, Mr. Historian is going to tell you something, and I think I'm going to soak it. I'm going to go to bed because I'm tired. It's been a long day. It's been a long day. It was a pretty good day, but just between everything we did for the 4th and everything, I just feel so drained. Yeah. So
I will be driving today. Ah! Oh, man.
Don't crash them. Be nice to the files.
As long as they have their passport, they should be perfectly fine. Speaking of...
Don't break any of them.
Yeah. The handiwork that Sue gave me of topics was kind of interesting. And there was one on here that I think just about everybody in the world should either have or, have accessibility to. And it's a very useful tool to travel with. And I'm, of course, talking about passport. And for most people, it's kind of a foregone conclusion. If you go from one country to another, you need proof to who you are, a good idea what you look like, have a picture in there. And then usually if you do travel anywhere, say from the U.S. to England, you usually want to check in with the embassy so they know you're in the country. But, it works for a person's identity in international travel, allows the bearer to enter and temporarily reside in a foreign country, access local aid and protection, consular assistance from the government. In addition to facilitating travel, passports are a key mechanism for border security and regulating migration. It also serves as identity documents for various domestic purposes. State-issued travel documents have existed in some form since antiquity. Modern passports were universally adopted and standardized in 1920. Passport takes the form of a booklet bearing the name and emblem of an issuing government and contains the biographical information of the individual, including their full name, photograph, place and date of birth, and signature. A passport does not create any rights in the country they are visiting nor impose any obligation on the issuing country. Rather, it provides certification to a foreign government that this holder's identity and right to travel, with pages available for inserting entry and exit stamps and travel visas, endorsements that allow the individual to enter and temporarily reside in a country for a period of time and under certain conditions. Like our money, since 1998, many countries have transitioned to a biometric passport, which contains an embedded microchip to facilitate authentication and safeguard against counterfeiting. In our dollars, you get little strips that say USA 100, USA 50. With these, they've got all sorts of holograms and microchips. And as 2024, over 150 jurisdictions, such as e-passports, previously issued non-biometric passports usually remain valid until expiration. Now, eligibility for a passport varies by jurisdiction, although citizenship is a common prerequisite. However, a passport may be issued to individuals who do not have a status or full rights of citizenship, such as British or American nationals. Likewise, certain classes of individuals, such as diplomats and government officials, may be issued special passports that provide certain rights or privileges, such as immunity from arrest or prosecution. Now, while passports are typically issued by the national government, certain subnational entities are authorized to issue passports to citizens regarding within their borders. Additionally, other types of travel documents may serve a similar role to passports, but are subject to different eligibility requirements, purposes, and restrictions. Now, interestingly enough, passports have been around a long time. Now, etymological sources such as the Chalmers Dictionary show that the term passport may derive from a document required by some medieval Italian states in order for an individual to pass through the physical harbor, Italian passaporto, to pass the harbor, or gate, passaporte, to pass the gates of a walled city or jurisdiction. Such documents were issued by the local authorities to foreign travelers, as opposed to the local citizens, as is modern practice. They generally contained a list of towns and cities the document holder was permitted to enter or pass through. On the whole, documents were not required for travel to seaports, which were considered open trading points, but documents were required to pass harbor controls and travel inland from seaports. The transition from private to state control over movement was an essential aspect for the transition from feudalism to capitalism. Communal obligations to provide poor relief were an important source of the desire for control of movement. Now, one of the earliest known references of paperwork that served an anomalous role in the passport, interestingly enough, is found in the Hebrew Bible. In Nehemiah 2, 7 through 9, dating from approximately 450 BC, states that Nehemiah, an official servant, King Antaraxus of Persia, asked permission to travel to Judea. The king granted leave and gave him a letter to the governors beyond the river requesting safe passage for him where he traveled through their lands. The ancient Indian political text Arthurashtra, 3rd century BC, also mentions passes issued at the rate of 1 masha per pass to enter and exit the country, and describes the duties of the Maharajah, the superintendent of seals, who must issue sealed passes before a person could enter or leave the countryside. Now, passports were an important part of the Chinese bureaucracy as early as the Western Han, if not the Qin dynasty. These required such details as age, height, and bodily features. These passports determined a person's ability to move through the imperial counties and through points of control. The Chinese had their wall. Even children would need passports, but those of 1 year or less who were in their mother's care may have not needed them. In the medieval Islamic Caliphate, a form of passport was the barara, a receipt for taxes paid. Only people who paid their zakah for Muslims or aziza for dhimmis taxes were permitted to travel to different regions of the Caliphate. Thus, the barara's receipt was a basic passport. Along came the 12th century, and the Republic of Genoa issued a document called the Boleta, which was issued to the nationals of the Republic who were traveling to the ports of the Imperiums and to the ports of the Genoese colonies overseas, as well to foreigners who entered them. King Henry V of England was credited with having invented what some consider the first British passport in modern sense, as a means of helping his subjects prove that they were in foreign lands. The earliest reference to these documents was found in a 1414 Act of Parliament. In 1540, granting travel documents in England became the role of the Privy Council of England, and it was around this time that the term passport was used. In 1794, issuing British passports became the job of the office of the Secretary of State. In the Holy Roman Empire, a 1548 imperial Diet of Augsburg required the public to hold imperial documents for travel at the risk of permanent exile. Leave the country and don't come back. In 1791, Louis XVI masqueraded as a valet during his flight to Valence, as passports for the nobility typically included a number of persons listed by their function but without further description. A passport treaty of October 18, 1850, among German states standardized information, including issuing state, name, status, residence, and description of bearer. Tramping journeymen and job seekers of all kinds were not to receive pass cards. You guys are stuck. Now, before World War I, in most situations, only adult males could receive a passport. Their family members were written in their passport if they traveled with them. Even a married woman had her own passport. She could not use it without her husband present. Well, the rapid expansion of railway infrastructure and wealth in Europe began in the mid-19th century, led to large increases in the volume of international travel and a consequent unique dilution of the passport system for approximately 30 years prior to World War I. Speed of trains, as well as the number of passengers that crossed multiple borders, made enforcement of passport laws difficult. The general reaction was the relaxation of passport requirements. In the later part of the 19th century up to World War I, passports were not required on the whole for travel within Europe, and crossing a border was a relatively straightforward procedure. Consequently, comparatively few people held passports. Now, during World War I, European governments introduced border passport requirements for security reasons and to control the immigration of people with useful skills. These controls maintained in place after the war, becoming a standard, though controversial, procedure. British tourists of the 1920s complained especially about attached photographs and physical descriptions which they considered led to a nasty dehumanization. The British Nationality and Status of Aliens Act in 1914, clearly defining the notions of citizenship and creating a booklet form of passport, it also made photographs in a passport mandatory. In 1920, the League of Nations held a conference on passports, a Paris Conference on Passports and Customs Formalities, and through tickets. Passport guidelines and general booklet design resulted from the conference, which was followed up to conferences in 1926 and 27. The League of Nations issued Nason passports to stateless refugees from 1922 to 1938. Now, when the United Nations held a travel conference in 1963, no passport guidelines resulted from it. Passport standardization came about in 1980 under the auspices of the ICAO, International Civil Aviation Organization. Standards included those for machine-readable passports. Such passports have had an area where there is some information otherwise written in textual form is written as strings of alphanumeric characters, printed in a manner suitable for optical character recognition. This enables border controllers and other law enforcement agents to process these passports more quickly without having to try to input the information manually into a computer. The ICAO publishes the Doc 9303 Machine-Readable Travel Documents, a technical standard for machine-readable passports. A more recent standard is the biometric passports. These contain biometrics to authenticate the identity of travelers. The passport's critical information is stored on a small RFID computer chip, much like information stored on smart cards. Like some smart cards, the passport booklet designs calls for an embedded contactless chip that is able to hold digital signature data to ensure the integrity of the passport and the biometric data. Historically, legal authority to issue passports is found on the exercise of each country's executive discretion. Certain legal tenets follow, namely, first, passports are issued in the name of the state. Second, no person has a legal right to be issued a passport. Third, each country's government, in exercising its executive discretion, has complete and unfettered discretion to refuse to issue or revoke a passport. And fourth, that the latter discretion is not subject to judicial review. However, legal scholars, including A.J. Arkelian, have argued that evolutions in both the constitutional law and law of democratic countries and the international law applicable to all countries now render those historical tenets both obsolete and unlawful. Now, we're getting to the fun date of this whole issue. The United States, back in July of, get my date right here, it was put out in 1775, the United States put out their first passports. And it was kind of interesting because at the time, when they had to put it out, it was primarily designed to help the United States citizens during the Barbary Wars. They're having problems with pirates, basically, ransacking ships, taking crews, and therefore they wanted to find a way that they could help, these travelers maintain their, they're United States citizens. This is the booklet that is going to basically keep you safe, or at least identify that you are here. Passports were sheets of paper printed on one side, including a description of the bearer, and were valid for 3 to 6 months. Minister of France, Benjamin Franklin, based the design on passports that were issued by his mission on that of the French passport. Well, from 1776 to 1783, no state government had a passport requirement. The Articles of Confederation government, from 1873 to 1879, did not have a passport requirement either. Now, the Department of Foreign Affairs of the war period also issued passports, and department carried over by the Articles of Confederation government continued to issue passports 1783 to 1789. Well, in July of 1789, these were carried over by the government established under the Constitution. In September of that year, the name of the department was changed to the Department of State. The department handled foreign relations and issued passports, and until the 19th century had various domestic duties. For decades thereafter, passports were issued not only by the Department of State, but also by states, cities, and notary publics. For example, an internal passport dated 1815 was presented to Massachusetts citizen George Barker to allow him to travel as a free black man to visit relatives in southern slave states. Passports issued by American authorities other than the Department of State breached proprietary and caused confusion abroad. Some European countries refused to recognize passports not issued by the Department of State unless the United States consular officials endorsed them. The problems led to the Congress in 1856 to give the Department of State the sole authority to issue passports. I could see how that could become a problem. Now, from 1789 through the late 1941, the federal government required passports of citizens only during two periods, during the Civil War and as well during and shortly after World War I. The passport requirement of the Civil War lacked statutory authority. During World War I, European countries instituted passport requirements. The Travel Control Act of May 22, 1918 permitted the President, when the United States was at war, to proclaim a passport requirement, and President Wilson issued such a proclamation on August 18, 1918. The war ended on November 11, 1918, but the passport requirement lingered until March 3, 1921, the last day of the Wilson administration, kind of swapping it there. Now, in Europe, general peace between the end of the Napoleonic Wars in 1815 and the beginning of World War I, 1914, and the development of railroads gave rise to that international travel by a large number of peoples. Countries such as the Russian Empire and the Ottoman Empire maintained passport requirements, a lot more people. After World War I, many European countries retained their passport requirements. Foreign passport requirements undercut the absence of a passport requirement under U.S. law for Americans exiting the country between 1921 and 1941. Big thing to think about is back then was about the same time as the Great Depression, and people were moving to other places to seek out work. Thus, they couldn't get out of the country, or, depending on if people were migrating into this country, they would need a passport. Hello. Now, contemporary passports, the period requiring passports, began on November 29, 1941, shortly before World War II broke out for us. The 1978 Amendment on the Immigration and Nationality Act of 1952 made it unlawful to enter or depart the United States without an issued passport, even in peacetime. Even if passports were not usually required, Americans requested them. Records of the State Department show that 130,360 passports were issued between 1810 and 1973, and that 369,000, almost 370,000 passports were issued between 1877 and 1909. Some of those passports were family passports or group passports. Passport application could cover variously a wife, a child or children, one or more servants, or a woman traveling under the protection of a man. The passport would be issued to the man. Similarly, a passport application could cover a child traveling with their mother. The passport would be issued to the mother. The number of Americans who traveled without passports is unknown. Now, the League of Nations held a conference in 1920 considering passports a through-train travel, and conferences, as we mentioned, 1926 and 27, concerning passports. The 1920 conference put forward guidelines to lay out features of passports, which in 1926 and 27 followed up. These guidelines were steps in the shaping of contemporary passports, such as the U.S. Type 3 mentioned in the sections. Another guidance was languages in the passports. A conference on travel and tourism held by the United Nations in 1963 did not result in standard-sized passports. Passport standardization was accomplished in 1980 under the auspices of the International Civil Aviation Organization. Designs of the passports changed over the years. Prior to World War I, a passport was usually a large diploma, which had a large engraved seal in the Department of State at the top, repeated in red wax at the bottom, the bearer's description and signature on the left, and his name on the right above space for data such as accompanied by his wife, all in ornate script. In 1926, the Department of State introduced the Type 3 passport. This has a stiff red cover with a window cut out through which the passport number was visible. That style of passport contained 32 pages. Initially, the U.S. passport was issued for 2 years, although in the 50s, an application by the holder, the passport could be stamped so that the time was extended without reissue. Stamping for a further extension is not permitted at present. In the succeeding decades, the period of validity for adult applicants was gradually extended to 3, 5, and eventually 10 years, current standard. Now, again, 1981, the United States became the first country to introduce machine-readable passports, following the standards set by the International Civil Aviation Organization. These passports featured an identity page with data encoded in optical character recognition format to speed up processing and deter fraud. As of 1910, all the previous series have expired, so can't blame it on the past. Now, on November 16, 1998, the Department of State introduced a major technology shift by issuing the first passports with digitized photos. Instead of gluing a physical photograph to the page, the image was printed directly onto the data page using a computer-generated imaging to prevent photo substitution. In 2000, passports with digital photos started to be issued, and the photograph was printed directly onto the page rather than being glued or laminated. This was the final machine-readable U.S. passport with a non-biometric design. It continued to be issued until 2006 and 2007, when it was replaced by the first biometric U.S. passport edition. All U.S. passports issued after such, with the exception of a few categories like emergency passports, have been designed as e-passports. So, for all you people that want to try to take and travel out there, it can be a lot of fun. Legal driving force behind the biometric passports is the Enhanced Border Security and Visa Entry Reform Act of 2002, which states the smart card identity cards that may be used in lieu of visas. That law also provides that foreigners who travel to the U.S. and want to enter the U.S. visa-free under the Visa Waiver Program must bear machine-readable passports that comply with international standards. If a foreign passport was issued on or before October 26, 2006, that passport must be a biometric passport. The electronic chip in the back cover of the U.S. passport stores an image of the photograph of the passport holder, passport data, and the personal data of the passport holder, and has capacity to store additional data. Great, I can get my YouTube. The capacity of the radio frequency identification chip is 64 kilobytes, which is large enough to store additional biometric identities in the future, such as fingerprints and iris scans. Data within the chip is signed with an RSA 2048 certificate issued to the United States Department of State by the ICAO Public Key Directory. Any and all data must be authentic and untampered, or else the signature will be invalidated. Now, data in a passport chip is scannable by electronic readers, a capability which is intended to speed up the immigration processing. This data, along with signature, is verified to either be valid or invalid. Like toll road chips, data in passport chips can be read when passport chips are adjacent to readers. The passport cover contains a radio frequency shield in the form of a mesh wire within the cover, so the cover must be opened for the data to be read. This cover acts as a Faraday cage. Now, according to the Department of State, Basic Access Control Security Protocol, it prevents access to the data unless the printed information within the passport is also known or can be guessed. According to privacy advocates, the back and the shielded cover are ineffective when passport is open, and a passport may have to be opened for inspection in a public place such as a hotel, bank, or internet cafe. An open passport is subject to unwelcome reading of the chip data, such as by a government agent who is tracking the passport holder's movements, or by a criminal who is intending to cause identity theft. I feel very reassured. But it's the technology, and I imagine that they keep advancing. And you read about those FRID chips. Those are the type of things they stick into your pets, so that way you lose your dog, you can go to the local dog pound, you find your dog, scan him, and you can prove he's yours. They also want to talk about putting these things into humans, and they've done it in a few states. Scary. But this has been our fun little Wayback Wednesday. You folks have a good one out there, and we will see you next week. Have a good night.